In a video released by CBC Vancouver, a police officer was seen at a stop sign along the Beach Avenue bike lane, politely reminding cyclists to obey the rules of the road. And my initial reaction was an eye roll, but it really was in good faith, even if a bit tone deaf. It was an attempt to help road safety, but it ignores the elephant in the room, or the G-Wagon in the intersection. Cars. Yes, cyclists run stop signs. It's something I noticed when I first moved to Vancouver, but also a startling amount of drivers doing the same. And to highlight this, I went over to the intersection of Hornby and Beach where they filmed that video to capture a little bit of data. What I found was actually worse than I expected. In just 30 minutes, 198 cars passed, of which only 21 of those cars actually stopped, just over 10%. But the data gets more interesting when you split it up by conflict and no conflict. And in this case, only one single driver actually stopped when there was nothing forcing them to. During the same time, 113 cyclists went through the intersection, and we can see a marginally higher percentage didn't stop, in a higher proportion during conflict compared to cars. But that conflict usually looked like this. Now, I wasn't completely satisfied with this data and wanted to see something more suburban, so I decided to head to Dunbar Southlands to collect data at the relatively busy intersection of 29th and Crown, located along the 29th Avenue bike route and equidistant from 3 schools. Now, I have altered the data slightly on this one, and that's because halfway through marking down all of the findings, I noticed that one single car stopped a lot, and it turns out it was a student driver doing laps. They passed through the intersection 10 times and stopped 10 times, which was 40% of the total stops. So I kept only one stop from this car. Out of the 171 cars that passed, 16 stopped just shy of 10%. And of those, only 2 stopped without conflict, and one of those was the student driver. As for cyclists, only 24 passed through and only 1 stopped when they gave way to a driver. That's just 4.2%. Now, I understand this data is limited, but you get the idea. Vancouverites don't stop, no matter what mode they choose. And this behavior has led to something that I like to call the Vancouver Stop, which is when a driver has the right of way and yields to a cyclist, which works for the two-wheeled riders who like to break the rules, but to Fresh from Ontario Nick or others who try to follow the rules, you will be familiar with the experience of seeing a hand behind a glaring windshield furiously waving you through an intersection, even when it's not your turn. This just creates confusion and wastes everybody's time. Please stop doing this. But anyway, I'd like to get back to Constable Doucette when he said this.
So we're trying to remind people now that even if there's no one there, still play by the rules.
But what if the rules are stupid? Because it's pretty clear that the vast majority don't follow this rule, and I think if there's a rule that seemingly everyone breaks, then we need to change. Either make the built environment more condoning to the desired behavior, or the expedient option, change the stupid rules. And I'm sure some of you know where I'm going with this, the Idaho Stop. The Idaho Stop and Dead Red are names for laws that allow cyclists to treat stop signs as yield signs and red lights as stop signs. And the reason it received the moniker Idaho Stop is simply because Idaho was the first place in North America to implement such laws in 1982, when citations for cyclists were clogging up the courts. Surprisingly, Idaho remained the sole state to have such laws on the books until 2017, when Delaware joined the club with stop as yield for cyclists. As to date, there are 11 states in the US that have stop as yield, 4 of which also have red as stop. As for Canada, a city councillor in Calgary failed to pass a proposal in 2019, and as of today, it has yet to be written into law anywhere in the country. Which is a bit perplexing when you find out that when these laws are implemented, actual change occurs. The year after the Idaho stop laws were introduced in 1982, there was a 14.5% decline in bicycle injuries. An even better result was found in Delaware, with a 23% reduction of collisions at intersections after its introduction in 2019. And when comparing to closely matched places without the law, Idaho boasts a 30.4 lead in bicycle safety, all that with no perceived downsides to date. This law mainly helps reduce collisions by allowing cyclists to spend less time in blind spots of motorists when stopped at a light or sign, and spend less time in intersections by keeping momentum. It really is that simple. Allowing vulnerable road users to spend less time in hazardous places leads to fewer collisions. It also allows for quicker trips with less exertion, which can encourage more cycling, which can in turn reduce car emissions and reduce traffic, which I think most drivers can agree that less traffic and reduced chances of hitting cyclists is a good thing. Now, this is not meant to be a green light for cyclists to blow through stop signs without any regard for other people on the road. No, just like the cyclist did here, yield at the stop sign. If you have doubts about this with cyclists, just take a look at the Netherlands. They give green lights to cyclists in every single direction, and they seem to figure it out. Stop signs and traffic lights, by and large, are measures designed for cars. And as for PEVs, I think the Idaho Stop should apply for most, but I think there should be licensing for PEVs that go over 30 kilometers per hour on their own. And this is coming from someone who regularly uses one, but that is a subject for another video. So at this point, you might be thinking, why shouldn't this apply to drivers too? Most drivers also treat stop signs as yield signs anyway. Why not put it on the books? Which is a valid question. However, there are some distinct differences between driving and cycling that should be considered. Compared to the uninhibited sightlines of a cyclist, cars have many blind spots. Tom Scott's video about an intersection with a stop sign is a great example of why drivers require more care. And two, a car poses a far greater risk to vulnerable road users such as pedestrians and cyclists. They are bigger, heavier, and go much faster, not to mention the distractions. With more and more car dashboards looking like this, it's no wonder distracted driving-related collisions are on the rise. It may have even been a factor in this driver nearly running this woman over. So, no Idaho Stop for cars, but stop signs still suck, and for the most part, I think we should get rid of them. So what can be done? Well, we turn this into this, but not before turning this into this. A fundamental change in the way we build our intersections. Decrease the distance between crossings by extending the sidewalk into the intersection, which narrows the street, slowing traffic. Raised crosswalks or raised intersections level with the sidewalk work as speed bumps, also slowing traffic, and optional bollards to prevent vehicles from encroaching on the sidewalk. Now that's obviously a quick snapshot, but that's the basics. Some people might suggest these pseudo-traffic circles commonly found in Vancouver. I certainly have in the past. However, a study demonstrated that these may actually shift risk away from cars onto cyclists and pedestrians. I mean, this doesn't really scream pedestrian friendly. But anyway, my point is we don't need stop signs for cars or bikes. And I know it doesn't really matter because Vancouver Police barely enforce traffic laws anyway. However, let's consider adopting the Idaho Stop. Not because I think it's a permanent solution, but it's something we can do now while we work towards a more powerful change that can not only give us the safety we deserve, but also make our cities more pleasant places to be, one intersection at a time. So with that, my name is Nick. Thanks for watching.